The snow had started falling around 3 in the afternoon. Gentle at first, then coming down harder as the winter evening settled in. By 7 o'clock, the mountain road leading up to Pine Ridge was nearly impassable. Claire Dawson stood at the window of her small cabin, watching the white curtain of snow obscure everything beyond her porch. She'd lived here for 2 years now, ever since she'd left the city and everything she'd known behind. The cabin was modest, heated by a wood stove and lit by lamps when the power went out, which happened often up here in the mountains. But it was hers, and it was peaceful, and that was all she needed. She was 28 years old. With long brown hair she usually kept in a braid and green eyes that held both warmth and a certain wariness. Life had taught her to be careful about trusting people, but it had also taught her about kindness. Her grandmother had always said that when you have little, you understand better what it means to share what you have. Claire made her living doing freelance bookkeeping for small businesses, work she could do from home on her old laptop. It wasn't much, but it covered her needs. She'd learned to live simply, to find joy in small things. A good book by the fire, the sound of wind in the pines, the way the snow made everything clean and new. She was adding another log to the wood stove when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the wind or the creaking of tree branches. A knock at her door. Claire froze. No one came up this road in weather like this. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. She moved cautiously to the window and peered out into the swirling snow. A man stood on her porch, and he was holding a child. Claire's heart clenched. Even through the snow, she could see that the man was in trouble. He was dressed well enough, a heavy jacket and good boots, but he was swaying slightly as if exhausted or injured. The child in his arms, bundled in a blanket, wasn't moving. She didn't think. She just opened the door. The cold hit her immediately, along with a gust of snow that blew into the cabin. The man looked up at her, his face pale beneath dark, snow-crusted hair. He had strong features and dark eyes that held desperation. "Please," he said, his voice rough. "My son, he's so cold." Our car went off the road about a mile back. "I need help." Claire stepped back instantly. "Come in, quickly." The man staggered inside, and Claire shut the door behind him, closing out the howling wind. She guided him to the worn sofa near the wood stove. "Sit down," she said firmly. "Let me see the child." The man carefully lowered himself onto the sofa, still holding the boy. As Claire came closer, she could see the child was perhaps 4 years old. His small face flushed with fever, his breathing shallow. "How long have you been out there?" she asked, her hands already unwrapping the damp blanket from around the boy. "An hour, maybe more. I tried to walk back toward town, but the road—" The man's voice broke. "He was already sick when we left the hotel. Fever. I was trying to get him down the mountain to a hospital, but I couldn't see in the snow." The car slid off into a ditch. Claire's mind was already working through what needed to be done. She grabbed the quilts from her bed, the warmest ones she had. "We need to get him warm, but carefully." "What's his name?" "Daniel. His name is Daniel." The man looked at her with such raw fear in his eyes that Claire felt it in her chest. "Is he going to be okay?" "I don't know yet," Claire said honestly, because she believed in truth even when it was hard. "But we'll do everything we can. What's your name?" "Michael." "Michael Foster." Claire didn't recognize the name, and she didn't ask more questions. There would be time for that later. Right now, this child needed help. She felt Daniel's forehead. The boy was burning up, but his hands were like ice. She'd seen this before years ago when she'd volunteered at a community clinic. High fever combined with exposure to cold. It was dangerous. "Michael, I need you to take off his wet clothes while I get some warm water and dry things. Can you do that?" Michael nodded, his hands already moving to unzip Daniel's jacket. His fingers were shaking, whether from cold or fear, Claire couldn't tell. She moved quickly through her small cabin, heating water on the propane camp stove she kept for emergencies, gathering her softest flannel pajamas, the ones that were too big for her but might fit a small child. She found her bottle of children's fever medication, kept from when her niece had visited last year. When she returned, Michael had Daniel down to his undershirt and pants, the wet outer clothes in a pile on the floor. The boy was shivering now, which Claire took as a good sign. Shivering meant his body was still fighting. "That's good, Michael. Shivering means he's trying to warm himself up." She handed him a warm, damp cloth. Wiped down his face and hands gently. We need to warm him gradually. While Michael tended to his son with careful, loving hands, Claire prepared a warm compress for Daniel's feet. She'd learned this from her grandmother, who'd raised 6 children through hard winters with little money for doctors. Warm the extremities slowly, keep the core temperature from dropping too fast. 20 minutes later, Daniel was dressed in Claire's soft pajamas, wrapped in quilts, and lying on the sofa with his head in his father's lap. His breathing had deepened and the shivering had stopped. Claire had managed to get him to swallow some fever medication. His fever should start coming down soon, she said quietly. But we need to keep watching him through the night. Michael looked up at her, and for the first time, Claire really saw him. He was probably in his mid-30s, with a strong jaw shadowed with stubble and dark hair that curled slightly when it dried. His eyes were an unusual shade of dark gray, and right now they were filled with gratitude and something that looked like guilt. You saved his life, he said simply. We don't know that yet, Claire replied, though she hoped it was true. He's stable now, and that's what matters. She noticed for the first time that Michael was shaking too. When's the last time you ate? He frowned as if trying to remember. This morning, I think, before we left the hotel. Claire stood and moved to her small kitchen. I'll make soup. You need to eat, and so will Daniel when he wakes up. As she heated the homemade vegetable soup she'd made 2 days ago, she became aware of Michael watching her. The cabin was so small that the living area and kitchen were basically one room. There was nowhere to hide. No way to maintain the kind of distance she usually kept between herself and other people. Why are you helping us? Michael asked quietly. You don't know us. We could be anyone. Claire stirred the soup, thinking about her answer. My grandmother used to say that we're all just walking each other home. Sometimes the path gets hard, and we need someone to share their fire. That's all I'm doing, sharing my fire. Michael was quiet for a moment. Not everyone sees it that way anymore. I know, Claire said. But that doesn't mean we stop offering. She brought him a bowl of soup and a piece of bread. Michael ate carefully, trying not to disturb Daniel, who had finally fallen into a real sleep. You can tell me to mind my own business, Claire said, settling into the wooden chair across from the sofa. But what were you doing up this mountain in weather like this with a sick child? Michael set down his bowl. Being a fool mostly, he looked down at Daniel with such tenderness that Claire felt her throat tighten. We were staying at the resort hotel, taking a few days together. Just the 2 of us. Daniel's been through a lot this past year, and I thought getting away might help. But he woke up this morning with a fever. I thought it was just a cold, nothing serious. Then it got worse, and I panicked. I thought I could make it down the mountain to a hospital. In this weather? The forecast said it wouldn't get bad until tonight. I didn't know. He shook his head. I just wanted to get him help. Instead, I nearly got us both killed. You got him here, Claire said gently. That's what matters. You didn't give up. Michael looked at her with those gray eyes. You're very kind. I'm practical, Claire corrected, though she knew it wasn't entirely true. The phone lines are down, by the way. I checked while you were warming up, and cell service is always spotty up here even in good weather. We won't be able to call for help until the storm passes. How long will that be? Claire glanced at the window, though there was nothing to see but white darkness. Hard to say. Could be a few hours, could be a day or 2. Mountain storms are unpredictable. She saw something flicker across Michael's face. Worry, maybe, or frustration. I need to let someone know where we are. My assistant, my brother, they'll be worried. I understand. But there's nothing we can do right now except wait, Claire stood and gathered more blankets from her closet. You should rest too. I'll watch Daniel for a while. I can't ask you to do that. You didn't ask. I'm offering. She spread a blanket over Michael's shoulders. Get some sleep. You're no good to him if you collapse from exhaustion. Michael looked like he wanted to argue, but he was too tired. Thank you, Claire. I don't even know your last name. Dawson, Claire Dawson. Thank you, Claire Dawson. I'm in your debt. No debt, Claire said firmly. Just rest. She settled into her chair with a book, though she didn't really read it. Instead, she watched the fire in the wood stove and listened to the storm outside. Every so often, she'd check Daniel's forehead. The fever seemed to be coming down, thank goodness. Around midnight, Daniel woke up. His eyes fluttered open, confused and frightened in the unfamiliar room. Daddy? He whispered, his voice small and scared. Michael was awake instantly. I'm here, buddy. Right here. Where are we? We're safe. This is Miss Claire's house. She's helping us. Daniel's eyes found Claire in the shadows. She moved closer, kneeling by the sofa so she'd be at his level. Hello, Daniel, she said softly. How are you feeling? My throat hurts. I bet it does. Would you like some water? He nodded, and Claire brought him a cup with a straw. He drank slowly, his small hand reaching up to hold his father's. Are you hungry? Michael asked. Daniel shook his head. Tired. Then sleep, sweetheart. I'll be right here, as Daniel closed his eyes again, his small face relaxing back into sleep. Michael looked at Claire with wonder. His fever's broken. I can feel it. Claire touched Daniel's forehead gently. You're right. He's much cooler. The medicine helped, and the warmth. He'll be okay, Michael. She saw tears slide down Michael's face, catching the firelight. He didn't try to hide them. I was so scared. I've never been that scared in my life. I know, Claire said simply. His mother died last year, Michael said quietly, the words seeming to pull out of him. Cancer. She fought it for 2 years, and we thought she was going to make it. But, he stopped, his voice breaking. It's just been the two of us for 8 months now. If something happened to him, if I lost him too, Claire reached out and squeezed his hand. You didn't lose him. He's right here and he's going to be fine. Michael held on to her hand for a moment, as if it were an anchor. Then he let go, embarrassed. I'm sorry. I don't usually fall apart like this. You're not falling apart. You're being human. There's a difference. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both watching Daniel sleep. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin it was warm and safe. Tell me about him, Claire said eventually. Tell me about Daniel. Michael's face softened with love. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. Smart, funny, kind. He loves trains and dinosaurs and asking 1,000 questions. He wants to be a paleontologist when he grows up, or an astronaut, or maybe both. Claire smiled. Sounds like a boy with big dreams. His mother used to read to him every night. These old adventure books she'd loved as a kid. Now I do it, but I can never get the voices quite right the way she did. He's patient with me, though. Michael's voice was thick with emotion. He's been so brave through everything. Too brave for a 4-year-old. Children are stronger than we think, Claire said. And it sounds like he has a father who loves him very much. That's worth everything. Michael looked at her curiously. You're very wise for someone so young. Claire laughed softly. I'm 28, and I've lived enough life to learn a few things. My grandmother raised me after my parents died when I was 10. She taught me what matters, and what doesn't. What matters? Michael asked. Kindness, Claire said simply. Everything else is just details. They talked through the long hours of the night, taking turns dozing while the other kept watch over Daniel. Claire learned that Michael ran some kind of company, though he was vague about the details. She got the impression that he was used to being in control, used to fixing problems with money or resources or sheer force of will, finding himself helpless on a mountain road. Unable to save his son without a stranger's kindness had shaken him deeply. As dawn began to lighten the windows, the storm finally started to ease. The wind died down and the snow began falling more gently. Daniel woke up hungry, which Claire took as the best possible sign. She made oatmeal with cinnamon and honey, and the boy ate it slowly, still wrapped in quilts, still close to his father. This is good, Daniel said shyly to Claire. I'm glad you like it, sweetheart. We were in an adventure, weren't we, Daddy? Michael smiled, though his eyes were still shadowed. Yes, buddy, we were. And Miss Claire saved us. She did. Daniel looked at Claire with serious eyes. Thank you for saving us. Claire felt her heart squeeze. You're very welcome, Daniel. By mid-morning, the snow had stopped entirely. Michael borrowed Claire's old snow boots and trudged down the road to check on his car and to try to get cell signal. He was gone for nearly an hour. When he returned, his expression was complicated. The car's going to need a tow truck, he reported. I got through to my assistant. She's been frantic. My brother's been calling hospitals and police stations, looking for us. He paused. And I called for a helicopter. Claire looked up from where she was reading to Daniel. A helicopter? It'll be here in about 30 minutes. They're going to take Daniel to the hospital for a full checkup, just to be safe, and he hesitated. They'll bring you whatever supplies you need. Food, firewood, anything. I know you used up your resources helping us. That's not necessary, Claire started to say. It is to me, Michael interrupted gently. The helicopter arrived right on schedule, landing in the clearing near Claire's cabin with a thunderous noise that made Daniel press against his father excitedly. It was a sleek machine, expensive-looking, with a pilot and a paramedic aboard. The paramedic checked Daniel over quickly and gave Michael a reassuring nod. He looks good, Mr. Foster, but we'll have the doctors check him out thoroughly once we get to the hospital. Mr. Foster. The paramedic had said it with a certain deference that made Claire suddenly wonder who Michael really was. As they prepared to leave, Michael pulled Claire aside. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. Yes, I do. Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. This is my personal number. Please call me. Let me repay your kindness somehow. Claire took the card automatically, glancing down at it. Michael Foster, CEO, Foster Technologies. She looked up at him with wide eyes. Foster Technologies was one of the biggest tech companies in the country. She'd done bookkeeping for small businesses that desperately wanted contracts with Foster Technologies. The CEO was known to be brilliant, reclusive, and worth billions. You're that Michael Foster, she said quietly. I'm just a man who nearly lost his son and was saved by a stranger's kindness, Michael replied. That's all that matters to me right now. Daniel came over and hugged Claire's legs. Bye, Miss Claire. Thank you for the oatmeal and the stories. Claire knelt down and hugged him back. You take care of yourself, Daniel, and listen to your daddy. I will. She watched them walk to the helicopter, Michael carrying Daniel carefully through the snow. At the door, Michael turned back one more time, his eyes meeting hers across the distance. Then they were inside, and the helicopter was lifting off, leaving Claire standing alone in front of her cabin. She looked down at the business card in her hand, and then tucked it into her pocket. She'd never call that number. What would be the point? He was a billionaire CEO, and she was a woman who lived in a cabin in the mountains, barely making ends meet. Their worlds had intersected for one night during a storm, but that was all it could ever be. She went back inside, cleaned up the cabin, and tried to return to her normal life. But it felt different now. The silence seemed louder. The space felt emptier. 3 days later, a truck arrived. A big commercial delivery truck that looked absurdly out of place on the narrow mountain road. The driver knocked on her door with a tablet. Delivery for Claire Dawson? I didn't order anything, Claire said, confused. It's from Michael Foster. I need you to sign here. For the next hour, Claire watched in stunned disbelief as the delivery people unloaded box after box. Premium groceries, enough to last her 6 months. High-quality firewood, professionally cut and stacked. A new laptop computer, top of the line. Books, dozens of them, in genres Claire loved. A check made out to her for an amount that made her hands shake. There was a note, handwritten in strong, neat script. Thank you for sharing your fire. You gave me back everything that matters. Please accept these gifts in the spirit they're offered. Not as payment, but as gratitude. You taught me something important that night. That wealth is measured in kindness, not currency. You're richer than I'll ever be. With deepest thanks, Michael Foster. P.S. Daniel asks about you every day. He calls you the angel in the mountain. He's not wrong. Claire sat down on her porch steps, the note in her hand, and cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming recognition that sometimes, in this complicated world, genuine goodness still existed. That a simple act of opening her door to strangers in a storm had mattered. That kindness always mattered. She never called the number on the card, but she kept it, tucked into her grandmother's old Bible, a reminder that we're all just walking each other home, and sometimes the path brings together people who seem to have nothing in common except their shared humanity. And that, as her grandmother would have said, was everything.